Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Aaronworth, signing on to the sign-off of Frameworth podcast for yet another week. It's the forum for all the stories you didn't know you wished you knew about the world of sports and sports marketing. I'm joined in studio for the first time. We've kind of revamped things a little bit. We're actually side by side today, Dad. Look at this.
That's so I don't have to look at you.
I was going to say, you are trying hard not to make eye contact with me.
No, I'm looking at the screen.
I got to say, our guest this week is going to be upset that you're not really getting into the spirit of father-son relationship because there's a theme going in there, and we'll introduce that guest in just a little bit. But before we do, obviously, a shout out to all of our loyal listeners who've shown us so much support on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, etc. If you leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, we may pick your review and give you a little bit of a giveaway. As we're going to do this week, we have a shout out to Percat, Percatt via Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review titled Add to Your Podcast Regime. We agree with that. This is a must-listen podcast for sports fans, especially the hockey aficionado. Frameworth's clientele provides great insights to the world of sports collecting and marketing. This is a must-add to your podcast lineup. Well, Percat, thank you so much for the review. And once again, if you're out there and you want to put yourself up to potentially receive some free sports memorabilia, make sure you do the same. We may pick you at random. We're going to give you, look, in the spirit of today's episode, I think we have kind of a special product that we can give away. We're going to be giving away a signed Danbury Trashers 8x10 photo for one of the players. So reach out to us, Percat, signoffpod at frameworth.com with your shipping information. You got 30 days from the drop of this episode to do so. And why Danbury Trashers? Well, we're about to find out, okay? I typically spend so much time crafting up the perfect introduction for our guest each week on the podcast, but this week it feels like no introduction is necessary. We're closing in on the NHL playoffs, and yet still, the biggest story in hockey surrounds a team from Connecticut nearly 20 years ago, and the kid who was tasked with running it. Against all odds, he crafted one of the most notorious teams in hockey history, and you can learn all about it in the Netflix documentary Untold, Crime and Penalties. Today's guest is the bad boy of hockey, AJ Galante. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. Now that's an introduction. I need you to come with me everywhere and roll me out just like that. That was perfect.
I'll be a hype man. I'll be your hype man. I also like the fact that I said it needs no introduction and then went on to spend a paragraph introducing you, but a little bit of pomp and circumstance as you understand yourself. Now, AJ, for the listener who isn't aware, which, you know what, I'm actually kind of jealous of them because that means they get to watch this documentary, Untold, Crime and Penalties, for the first time. Take 2-3 minutes to describe who you are and what your relationship is to the Danbury Trashers.
Well, I'm AJ Galante and, born and raised here in Danbury, Connecticut, about an hour north of New York City. And, really, if you watch the documentary, I just was a little knock-around kid and played a little bit of hockey growing up, not at super high levels, but unfortunately, my playing career in high school, fell short when I had a pretty bad knee injury. And my father just randomly decided to start a United Hockey League franchise here in Danbury. Our city at the time wasn't really known for hockey, but he decided to just stick a team here. And he made me the president of the team at 17 years old. So it was, as crazy as that sounds, it's true. I still get people who think this isn't a true story, but I don't know how to convince some people, but it is a true story. And really, we had 2 crazy seasons. It was unfortunately short-lived, but it's probably for the best. It was only 2 seasons. The way things were trending, always trying to outdo ourselves with some of our hijinks there. So no, I mean that was really it. So.
Perfect.
Just a teenage president,
teenage president. Really, yeah. You say that as though it's common. You're like teenage president. You know the old story. Like, no one knows the story. And that's why it's so impressive to hear here. Now, basically the premise of the team is you used kind of your love of all things rambunctious, a little bit of professional wrestling, a little bit of kind of that bad boy mentality. And you brought a bunch of goons to the team in the best way possible. But
we'll call them enforcers. Okay.
Here's the thing. I think goon is a term that they use with love in hockey now, right? I mean, you got the movie Goon, which was a Canadian hockey movie as well, kind of a similar style. But one of the things I loved about this was your decision. Like, this was kind of the working man's version of Moneyball. I had that vibe watching this, where you're going out there. you're finding this balance between grit, but also scoring abilities, having the foresight, which, we're moving ahead a little bit, but to during the NHL lockout, sign a guy like Mike Rupp. It's like, yeah, sure. He can drop the mitts. He's a big boy, but he can also score. Those mitts work both ways. That sort of mentality leading into the season, and then that marketing ability. Where did this come from? Is this just something you were thrown to the wolves and decided that you had to figure out a way to make an ideal team? Or, playing video games, was it like franchise mode that would get you? Like, what was this that gave you the experience?
Well, franchise mode, EA Sports was basically my only on-the-job training, really.
There you go. Yeah.
But no, I mean, yeah, I guess it was just kind of, you get tossed into the deep end sometimes, and, you could either sink or swim. And, again, we had a great team around myself. It wasn't just me, obviously. So we listen, I think a lot of stars align for us. I tell people all the time, it's one thing to be good, and sometimes it's good to be lucky. And I think we had a little bit of luck go our way in certain circumstances, like the NHL lockout, our first season.
Sure.
Like I said, our proximity to New York City, Ranger fans, Islander fans, Devil fans, even Bruin fans up in Boston, they were looking for their hockey fix. So, we kind of were the new kid on the block. And, I think anytime you're a new kid on the block, there's a natural interest just to check it out anyway. You usually get at least one chance. And
sure,
we kind of figured, hey, listen, like I said, we aren't a big hockey town here. How do we keep people coming back? And again, blue collar city. And, like you said, growing up, I was a huge wrestling fan. I was one of those kids that always rooted for the bad guy, usually just to make my friends angry because they were always rooting for the good guys. So I always wanted to stick out and be different. And I don't know, man, as I got older, I used to go to a lot of wrestling events growing up. And there was just always like a presence when the bad guy came out. You felt him there. And he was like usually the character people love to hate, but you wanted to see him. And listen, we kind of figured out to make a bad guy wrestler out of a hockey team in a weird way. And even hockey, you guys know how it is. You got those guys that you hate if they're not on your team, but when they get on your team, you'll buy all their jerseys because you love them.
Brad Marchand.
Brad Marchand would be a good one.
Perfect. Exactly.
You hate him, but you'd want him on your team.
Yeah. I mean, he's the guy that, and when I used to go to games when I was younger, I mean, I was a Devil fan. That was my team growing up. And, when like Ty Domi used to come into town, I used to love Ty because, he just had that melon head, and you just hated you hated him so much, but he made an impact, whether he scored or not, like your father said, these guys, they, however you want to call them, enforcers, goons, but they had a presence. They were like, as soon as their shift came on, you kind of, it felt different when they were on the ice. And
AJ, here's the thing. First of all, you're way too humble, because somebody had to have that concept to put that together and recognize what would work and what wouldn't. And you said you didn't have hockey in Danbury at the time. It wasn't much of a hockey town. And somehow you had to get the presence. Now, everybody can try and pretend that fighting isn't an exciting thing in the game, but the players love it. The fans certainly love it, and they're trying to get it out, but it's part of the game, and it is, as you say, something that people are drawn to. You managed to put together a team that immediately started drawing big fans, filling the stadium. It was, you got to see the documentary for those that haven't seen it, because I missed it when it came out. And then, as I said before, Brent Gretzky called me, and we can get into that, and asked me about some things. And I said, and he told me about the documentary, and I must have missed it binging on Yellowstone or something. Anyway,
Yellowstone's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why? Because it's similar in nature. It's a tough guy. There's bad guys in it, etc. So you recognized what would work in your environment, and your town probably work everywhere. You can't just build a whole league around fighting, but there's something to it. You built that team, and it became a blockbuster, filling the stands. That's you and your father doing that, and your your people around you as well. But That was your concept.
Can't forget T-Bone. Come on. Are you kidding me?
Take the credit for it.
Surprise star of the documentary. Are you kidding me? Tell me there's a person on this planet that smokes a cigar better than T-Bone. Are you like, he punctuates his sentences with them. They're amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to put it for sure. He's and that wasn't just for TV. I mean, that's him. You know, I mean, I tell people all the time. I think why the doc was pretty successful was that was us, you know, everyone. I mean, no one was putting on a show for the cameras. I mean, everyone in that doc was just being themselves. And I think that's what made it. I think people recognize, okay, these are authentic people. Because sometimes you watch TV and you're like, all right, they're putting on a show. But
yeah,
that was us. And
you know what? It makes sense because, and I think this is just, it's what emotion is wrapped up in. Like you have these enforcers, goons, and this and that, and they many of them probably come from a background where they're getting in trouble in this and whatnot. I think that people who are like that have just unbridled emotion that they don't know what to do with. And when it comes out in many ways. And you know people are being authentic because how many people in this documentary, quote unquote tough guys, end up crying in front of the camera in public? Not to shame them for doing it, but it's like, you know, they're real and authentic because they care. And it seems like that's at the heart of what you guys did.
No, it was just, you know, it was just a very passionate group of people, you know, and again, going back to luck. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, you know, you guys have a huge, you know, successful company, you know, in any aspect of life, when you're dealing with a team, it's not always easy to get everyone on the same page. There's always that one person that, not that they're doing something wrong, but you just always have to rein in a little bit, you know. But with our team, it was almost like it was like a match made in heaven, from the players to the coaches to the office to the ticket takers to the people sweeping, you know, the stadium. Everyone was like, it was the most perfect blend of people, and everybody had the same goal. No one was like trying to outdo each other. It was just and you don't see that a lot. It was just one of those things where everyone, you know, like Yellowstone, we had the ranchers and everyone was going one way, and it worked. And it's not always like that, you know. And
that's another tribute to you, though, AJ, because if you watch the documentary, which I'm sure everybody listening will do it if they haven't already, if you watch the documentary, these guys loved you and would take a bullet for you and your father, right? You treated them well, and that doesn't happen all the time in hockey. It's the owners against the players instead of the owners with the players. And if you listen to the guys, and I've talked to a lot of them subsequently on the phone the last few days, they're still passionate about the team. I spent 40 minutes on the phone with Mike Rupp, and he had nothing but good things to say. And here's a guy that got a Stanley Cup with New Jersey and played Pittsburgh and other teams, but he still is passionate about the Trashers. That's a tribute to you and your dad and how you treated the people. It was players with the owners, not players against the owners.
Well, here's one thing that I want to add to that, because look, of course we're going to pump your tires. You're the reason why this team exists. You're a large part of the reason why this team exists. But tell me there wasn't a part of you as a young president, as the person who's kind of working against the world, as someone who loves the bad guy in professional wrestling, that wasn't kind of playing the role of course you're going to hate me. You're going to love to hate me. You're being that, because I got to be honest, like, I grew up, you and I are similar ages, and that type of bravado was very often condemned in a setting by people who are, you know, picked on or whatever. But you knew it came from a good place. You were playing a role. And the trajectory that the documentary takes, it seems like they're trying to set you up as dislikable in the beginning, only to have a redemptive arc, which I think is similar to every person on the team. They go through it, you go through it. It just seems so well put together. Was that intentional on your part?
1,000,000%. That's one thing I will take credit for, because, you know, what happened is, you know, I've been by my dad's side since I was young, probably just like yourself. And, you know, the tough thing is, when you're always by, you know, my dad's my hero. I want to be just like him. I'm eerily like him in ways I sometimes, even now, I'm like, wow, that sounded like my dad sometimes. But, you know, sometimes, you know, you're looked at as quote unquote spoiled. And that's tough, because I'm willing to work as hard as anybody, whether you got $1 billion or you got $2, you know, and I knew, when my dad named me the president or whatever, like I knew I was going to get so much backlash. I knew I was going to take a lot of stuff from people. So like you said, I was like, you know what, if I'm going to get flack anyway, I might as well amplify my efforts in taking it. And I just became that. I mean, listen, at 17 years old, telling ESPN, hey, we're going to be the baddest hockey team of all time. We never even played the puck hadn't even dropped yet. And to hear like a 17-year-old punk kid say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I mean, right away, people were just up in arms, but it worked because I think, and I don't have the numbers so long ago, but I know we gross, ticket sales when we were the away team, they were selling out buildings everywhere because they wanted to see us get pounded. And
amazing.
They wanted to stick it right back to the young punk kid running this team. And it just worked. And, just little things we would do just to aggravate everyone. It's so funny. We refused to play preseason games. We would, and you know what? I didn't grow up in, like I said, I played the game. So, I learned a lot about hockey culture, just from afar, really, and, little things like switching players' jerseys during warm-up so the opposing team didn't know what line was what. And just stupid, just like stupid little, like just the stupidest little things just to aggravate people. Hey, what I learned in the boxing industry now is the last thing you want is an angry fighter, because if a fighter goes in the ring angry, you got to be cool, calm, and collective. And we were aggravating people so much that by the time the puck dropped, they were so off their game that granted we didn't go undefeated, but we did well. And I attribute some of that to the mind games we used to play with people.
Of course.
It's just hilarious.
I mean, turning off the heat, I'm not saying you did it, but the heat turning off in the visiting locker rooms, the fire alarms going off in the hotels. There was a lot of anonymous things going on, I heard. We got fined frequently. And I mean, thankfully we weren't in the days of smartphones where there was video cameras and proof of a lot. So there wasn't, the commissioner would get aggravated because there wasn't too much proof of things, but he had to take the word of it. And we had a good time. Well, that Commissioner Richard Brosel of the UHL at the time, what's your relationship with him like now? Because the documentary paints a picture, and I kind of like this as well, because I view the documentary almost as a segment of professional wrestling. And he is clearly the villain in this, even though you guys are playing the role of villain. But at the end, he says a lot of really nice things about you and your dad and what you guys brought to the league. Do you still talk to him? Are you guys still in touch at all?
Yeah, we talk from here, from time to time. And I personally thought he was the star of the whole documentary. I mean,
he was great.
He was like, if you remember, like what me and his relationship was, it was kind of like Ferris Bueller and the principal trying to catch him. It was like a lovable hate. You know what I mean? And, listen, he, he's totally bald now, but he had a little bit of hair left when we got into the league. And then after us, he lost it all. And I break his chops about that. And he's a character. And man, he has to have a lot of trauma from those years. I'll tell you, he was the best. But we had a great relationship, but at the same time, we would mess around with each other. But I didn't know to respect him. I mean, he was a commissioner. I knew there was that line there, and he had a job to do. So I mean, I would get the call every Monday morning after the weekend of games, and he'd be screaming at me, yelling at me, and it was just fun. And what he would do is after he yelled at me, he would call my dad and kind of, review what he told me. And finally, my dad, and this is a true story, my dad once wired him, I believe, $10,000 and said, listen, use this as a suspension retainer. And every time, just take it off. Why are you bothering me weekly? So that's a true story. And because my dad's like, look, I got a lot of things going on. I can't be taking these calls every Monday. I'll have AJ send the money and just dock it off each week, whatever you got to do. And he was like dumbfounded. There
was a line, but you guys kept moving it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You had to make adjustments because he'd tell you right at the beginning, we can't have this, this, and this. And then the next week you'd do it. And then he'd say, okay, but you can't do this, this, and this. And it would keep moving. Yeah,
it was. But again, I mean, he was the best. I thought he was the star of the documentary. He's hilarious. And that's how he was, 18 years ago.
I honestly feel like you could pick any number. I mean, Wingfield was a huge star at the time and was a big star of the documentary as well. You can T-Bone, is just a cult favorite. You can pick almost anyone, you as well as being the star. And that's one of the most interesting things about it, is that all the characters meant so many different things to so many different people. I want to draw this comparison because I always find this funny. There's the story of cops and robbers, and traditionally you're supposed to be on the team of the cops, and that's, rah, get him. But there was a love of the relationship between you and the commissioner. And then all of a sudden the documentary introduces the FBI and the crowd boos them. It's that's the kind of thing that you absolutely love about it. And I think the Ferris Bueller comparison makes sense because there's an understanding of like, if I don't catch you, no big deal. Don't let me catch you and we won't be in trouble. And then the FBI comes and they're doing wiretaps and they're doing undercovers. And it's like, those aren't the rules of the game. You can't do that. Yeah. Like how great is it to know you're on that side of knowing that you were getting away with something and people are disliking the FBI for it?
I don't understand it. Cause again, I mean, contrary to what people may believe, my father always taught me, hey, you always respect law enforcement. They have a job to do. It wasn't like we were sitting there, screw the cops, and we weren't like, I wasn't raised that way, from time to time you'd see people and, you always be respectful, they have a job to do. But I don't know where the psychology comes in where you're booing the FBI who's trying to do their job. And, it's kind of funny. I don't want to say it's too funny because I don't want any problems with them, but sure. I will say it's, I don't get it. It's a psychological thing. I see it all the time and I don't know where it comes from, but, listen, time heals all wounds. And, I think this doc and, the situation, my father had, unfortunately, legally, it's so far behind us now that it is almost funny. And you just don't, it's just really funny, but it's weird. Like you said, it's like we talked about, people you love to hate, you hate to love. It's a weird psychological thing with people.
I want to actually kind of continue on that a little bit. You talked about what happened with your dad legally. We don't need to get into that, but here's an interesting bit of information. So Crime and Penalties was a part of the Untold saga of Netflix documentaries. The day your dad pled in court was the day Malice in the Palace between the Pistons and the Pacers took place, which was another of the documentary stories in Untold.
Oh, wow.
Netflix.
I didn't even, you know what? That's some good research. I didn't even
Isn't that crazy?
realize that. That's funny. That's crazy.
Yeah. And that whole, that whole thing obviously stemmed from the beginning of the controversy between and the situation between Elzinga and Wingfield, a massive brawl breaking out, Wingfield having his leg broken in severe ways, potentially career ending. And I want to sort of pull on that a little bit, talk about that situation that happened, because obviously this all comes down to a rematch between Elzinga and Wingfield. You also have, obviously, a couple other important people in the documentary. You've got Roman Endure, who gets a 20-game suspension as a result of that initial brawl. But that brawl, I think, happened in 2004, and the rematch didn't happen as shown in the documentary until 2005, right?
Yes.
At that time, wasn't Endure on Kalamazoo?
So, we had 2 seasons, and the documentary, though, because of the time restraints, it almost like
makes it seem like one.
It almost looks like just one season.
Yes.
And yes. So you're right. So Kalamazoo was in, I think, Western Conference, I'll say. So we only played them during the regular season twice, once there, once here. And our first year, the funny thing is Brent Gretzky was Winger's line mate. Brad Wingfield was on Brent Gretzky's line. And, I'll never forget it. Winger gets hurt and, it was just, I cannot even describe to you, like, where it's a small arena, I heard the leg like snap.
Yeah.
Like it was disgusting. And, what happened was, you're right. Ruben Ender, the rest of the game was going off on Kalamazoo, what happened, year 2, because of the veteran rules and you need so many rookies and this and that, Ruben unfortunately was a casualty just to, different things. And they ended up bringing Ruben in that second year. Kalamazoo brought in Ruben just for that weekend,
Wow.
Maybe they thought he'd be like, a a peace treaty type of guy or something. But I remember seeing Ruman before the game and going up saying hi to him. And, he's like, listen, I told these guys, you know what? I mean, I have my role and stuff, but I'm not going to stop Winger from, if they cross paths, I'll do my best to protect them if it gets too out of line, but he's got to answer for it. And, you know what? I give Elzing a lot of credit and he could have sat that game out, they could have, but you know what? I'll give him credit that he went out there and, it was just a crazy time.
You ruin your reputation. It's a hockey thing. Okay. Yes. You got to answer the bell or you're that's the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't respond to something that, everybody knows when something happens one game, you're going to have to answer the bell the next game or you're going to be called a chicken or you lose your respect amongst the league. So yeah, good for him. He came back. It was a hell of a fight.
And I tell people, listen, I don't, things happen. What he did, what was dirty, but hey, things happen. You don't like to see it, but I give him credit. He did answer the bell. I mean, because trust me, he didn't have to come to Danbury if he didn't want to. We only played them once, twice, and then subsequently we play them in the finals. So weird stuff. But it was crazy times.
It's amazing because I was trying to put because I noticed at a certain point that the timeline of the documentary didn't quite line up with the two seasons. And here's a little kind of a surprise or a little special cookie in there in the episode. Go back and watch it. In one of the last scenes of the second brawl between your team and Kalamazoo, Danbury and Kalamazoo, there's a small fragment of a scene when Wingfield is going to skate off ice and Endor goes up to him to try to grab him as though he's engaging in a fight. Like, maybe you went too far. Maybe I've got to show my team that I'm working. Maybe the coach said, hey, we're paying you. You got to do something. They didn't end up engaging, but if you pay close attention, you can see Endor on the other team in that scene, which I found pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that's that's funny. Yeah, it's, but yeah, you're right. I remember the documentary producer saying, it's a shame we only have one episode because we have to kind of piece it all together. Yeah.
At this point, they're probably regretting the fact that they didn't make it a 2 or 3 part series. No, seriously,
there's enough there.
Well, it's true. And it's funny, the producers went to bat for us because, as Mikey said, it's part of a 5-part Untold series. And we were one of the chapters. And I was told Netflix at first wasn't sold on our story because, the other 4 were probably like big name, athletes and they were kind of like, what is this? And the producers, they went to bat and they're like, no, trust us. You want this episode. And, as you know, Brian, we've talked, I mean, some of the other characters on the team, they didn't even get to, you know what I mean? And it's a shame because there are so many stories. I mean, it's insane. So, you never know what the future holds.
It really is because I had phoned. So Ken Reed from Sportsnet was in here and I was telling him about our relationship and how it's growing. And he said to me, one guy you got to contact that wasn't in the documentary is John Morassi. John Nasty Morassi. And so I've contacted him recently. And what a character he is. And he's probably as famous as maybe Wingfield, who'd be the other like big name.
Yeah.
But he's had a whole career in enforcing all over the world, including KHL.
He is and it's funny, we got him after Brad got hurt. And what happened was when Wingfield had his leg broken, unfortunately, literally the next weekend, I mean, it was such it just took the air out of us when we lost Winger because he was the heart and soul of the team. And, we had toughness on the depth chart for days, but still it didn't feel the same without him. And that's when I met a guy who told me, hey, I'm really close friends with this guy, John Morassi. He's playing in Bakersfield at the East Coast League. He wants to come because he had heard the type of team we were. And I'm like, all right. And then the next day, this is how long ago, I got a box of VHS tapes and it said John Nasty Morassi. And I'm like, all right. And I put it in. Man, he's maybe 5'8", little guy, a pumpkin head, and
kind of like Ty Domi.
Oh my God! And you know what? Hand speed like I've never seen in hockey. I mean, at that level, and he'd be smiling. You'd be punching him in the head, and he'd be smiling at you. And I'm like, all right, this is our guy. And he came right in, and it was like next man up. And he was a major fan favorite for sure. And then the following season, we had Wingfield and Morassi on the same team, which was like, for anyone who enjoys, that part of hockey, it was like a fantasy lineup. And,
That's amazing.
But yeah, we had some characters for sure.
Now, I want to ask, we talk about some of the things that the documentary couldn't get to, just based on time, the 2 seasons, different players, this and that. What is one thing, if anything, that the documentary got wrong? Did you notice anything that you watched and you're like, that wasn't quite how it happened, or this wasn't portrayed the right way?
I promise you, and I tell people this, one of the things I really feared, like the week before this thing came out, was like, oh God, what? Because we didn't get a sneak preview. Like, that's part of the contractual stuff with Netflix, is we didn't get like a preview of it. When you guys were able to see it, we were able to see it. So it was, as it got closer, it was starting to get a little nerve wracking because, they had filmed in 2019 in the summer. And part of the deal was, my family, forget it. From the time of birth, I have like home videos and old pictures. And I'm starting to think like, oh God, I hope they don't put certain things in. And this home, they might have found, listen, some middle school sleepovers with buddies, you're acting nuts. I'm like, oh God, I hope they didn't find that tape, and, and then you start like, oh, what are they going to embellish? What are they not going to embellish? I promise you, it's like, other than like a couple little nitpicky things, such as you said, maybe piecing 2 season footages together, it's eerily accurate. I mean, I'm telling you, it is like, and my dad said the same thing. He's like, wow. He's like, they didn't even like lie or embellish for drama. Amazing. It was, and I think that's, again, what makes the story so crazy, because it's so true. And I got people to this day who'll message me on Instagram, and they're like, they're convinced it's not a real story. They're like, this is a mockumentary.
Oh,
like,
wow.
They think we were actors. They're like, you guys are actors. I was like, buddy, I don't know how to explain it to you, but it happened. But, it's I think that's the best compliment you could get, is that you were involved with something. I mean, I think that's some of the best compliments you could get. If you're involved with something so crazy and you have record of it and people still don't believe it, it's pretty funny.
Well, typically in like reality TV, the reason a producer adds drama is because there isn't drama. If anything, it's like they'd have to dial it back. Like we said, because there was so much, there are too many characters. There's this and that. Like, great. They stuck to their guns. They could have gone overboard, but then maybe it's too much. It felt authentic, as we mentioned earlier. And I think they did a good job kind of sticking to their lines there. Now, to talk more about the actual hockey aspect of the Danbury Trashers, it isn't just a matter in hockey of the owner of a team drafting players and saying, this is the play style I want. After your first season, there was a coaching change. Was there any difficulty speaking with the coaching staff and saying, this is the kind of game I want you to play? You may have your directions, but like, this is the end product. We don't care how you get there. Was there any conflict there?
It's so funny. So many people have asked me after watching the documentary, they're like, who was the coaches of this team? Because it's like, they don't even, I think we had good coaches, but it was such a unique and unusual situation where it actually wasn't fair to them, I think, because I think the players police themselves like they typically do. It's almost like they coach themselves.
Right.
And as crazy as that sounds, and it was just such a weird blend in ingredients we had, where a lot of times they look to me or my dad and be like, and I'm like, I'm not a coach. I played high school hockey, it was a very unfair situation for both the guys we had. But again, you talk about professional, they understood the situation too coming in. You know what I mean?
They knew their roles.
And again, it kind of all played itself out. But it is kind of.
Let me ask you this. You say they looked to you. I know in the documentary at one point, they looked up to the box where you were, and then the gloves dropped before the puck was even dropped. And they credit you with telling the guys that this is going to happen before the game. Is that a true story?
I think it was his dad. I think his dad.
It was my dad. So it was in the back of the. It was back in the day. Maybe you guys remember the old Nextel cell phones with the walkie-talkie. Yeah. And
right.
So we had back in those days. We all had Nextels, and my father had one, and it was before the first game. And Tommy T-Bone, the equipment manager, I saw my dad start chirping, like using the walkie-talkie. I'm like, who's he talking to? We're about to have our first game, And I look down and I see T-Bone kind of pull a Nextel out of his pocket. And I'm like, I'm looking back and forth. And my dad's like, bleep, bleep. He's like, put Wingfield on. And I look, I'm like, what the hell is going on? I look down and I literally see T-Bone, Brad's just, waiting for his shift or waiting to get on. And you see Tommy like give him the phone and Wingfield's looking at him like, what's wrong with you? And he takes it, Wingfield takes his glove off. He takes the phone. He's like, hello. And my dad was like, hey, listen, set the tone, get on the ice and drop your gloves. And thankfully there was
amazing.
And thankfully there was someone on the ice there to oblige with him. You know what I mean? Because, first shift, first game of the season, it's a lot of skilled guys at first. And, it was like ripping the Band-Aid off in Danbury. It was kind of like, hey, this is what you're in store for as long as we can do it. Unfortunately, it was 2 seasons, and people they went nuts.
You pointed up to your dad and said, okay, I did my job, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we used to do that. We used to do that all the time. I mean, me and Morassi, I mean, it was like we were flashing gang signs to each other. We would be having like, it would be like talking in sign. We'd be talking back, and people must have thought we were absolutely nuts. And a true story. I mean, I wish I could sit there and say, hey guys, we pulled the wool over your eyes for 18 years, but that's what it was.
You know what?
That's
the cool part of this, because you'd never get anybody to admit that in the NHL.
I know.
They're not allowed to, but it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. You go out there, set the tone, but in your position, you can say it now because it's not. And again, that's where you get the call from the commissioner the next day. So what the hell are you guys thinking?
Oh God, I would get so, and I mean, just every Monday, because I come home. I was in college at one point, and I went to college in New York, so 45-minute drive back and forth. So I'd come home on weekends for the games, or even the away games I'd watch on the feed, and on the way back to school every Monday back to New York, I'd get the call. It was Brissell. It was like almost 8:00 on the dot every Monday. I'd get the call, and sometimes I'd have to put myself on mute sometimes because I'd be laughing because he would get so mad. He would get so mad. When someone's yelling so hard, you could almost see through the phone him spitting because he's so mad sometimes. And I had to mute it sometimes because I'd be laughing, and then I'd be like, "Oh, I'm Mr. Brissell. I'm so sorry. I'll get
It'll
to the
never
bottom.
happen again until next week."
Don't worry, Commissioner. I used to joke with him. It used to get, sometimes he'd laugh, sometimes he'd be pissed. I said, "Don't worry, Commissioner. I'm on the case, and I'll see what happened." And it was just the same thing the next week. It was just fun time.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, it wasn't, your dad, when he bought into the league, it's not chump change. It's a $500,000 franchise fee. And then he committed to $1.5 million in arena renovations for Danbury. Was that available? Like, was that ready day one of the season starting, all those renovations?
Mikey, I swear to Christ, when I tell you within 15 minutes of opening the doors for opening night, it was October 15, 2004. I promise you, we still had guys putting the finishing touches to the arena, like welding. There was like sparks flying all over the place. I had 2 of my best friends through high school. They were painting quick. Like,
oh my God.
Like when you say it was the most trasher thing ever, like literally to the minute, we just got the assignment in to the teacher, like literally last second. It was just nuts, but
I love that.
It was crazy. Yeah.
Now, it's clear, my dad has mentioned he's spent the last couple of weeks talking to a lot of the ex-players and this and that. And obviously the community must have just such a shot in the arm after this. And this goes out to the Danbury Trashers community as well, who's likely going to be listening to this. It seems like they've just got new life. But it's not only about the fans. Have you noticed a significant change in the lives of the players since this documentary? Have they been able to capitalize both emotionally and financially on its release?
I'm so happy because, it's one of those, that's where I get the most joy from this documentary is like a lot of these guys, even if they weren't in the documentary, it's almost like they're walking around with like a badge of honor. Like, even if they played one game with us, it's like, I played with the Trashers, and it's just so surreal to me because I never would have thought this would happen. When we lost a team in 2006, in the most unceremonious way ever, I mean, I'm just like, all right, well, that's it. That's all she wrote. And
right.
To think 16 years later that I'd be talking to guys like you and fans from all over that love this doc. It's just surreal. It's humbling to me. And, but where I get the most joy is the players that were part of this, because really they're the reason, I get a lot of credit. My dad gets a lot of credit, but it's the players that, they're the soldiers that go out there and they walked our talk. So, to be able to see them get recognized, it's a great feeling. Because like you said, a lot of these guys, the majority of them, blue collar guys now, I know like Winfield works full time and all these guys, it's good to see, characters like that in this day and age still get a little bit of shine.
Absolutely.
So,
here's what I'm thinking. These guys, you're right. They went to bat for you. Now all of a sudden some of them that kind of fell by the wayside are now celebrities. Mike Rupp told me this jersey is iconic. This team is a real life. Slapshot is known as probably one of the best, if not the best, hockey movie of all time. This is real life Slapshot. Yeah. This is what probably they would base the story on if it was done after. But Mike Rupp was saying he gets calls from other NHL players. And we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but they want his jersey. They want a Trashers jersey. You've had unbelievable success selling Trashers jerseys after the documentary, and all these guys are talking about. You had Drake wear the jersey. Right. You had other big celebrities wear the jersey. It's a really cool jersey, and two, it's even that much better when it's associated with the documentary and the team that now people know all about. Right.
Well, I think that's the amazing thing to me is I'll see people will reach out to me for merchandise, jerseys, whatever. And truthfully, they're not even hockey fans. And they either watch the documentary or not even watch the doc. Sometimes people just see and be like a trash can with a hockey stick. I have to have that jersey, and it's like, it's the craziest thing. And again, it was just one of those things where, it's mind blowing to me, honestly. But Rupper, I saw Rupper a few weeks ago and we were talking. He's like, AJ, he goes, more people talk to me about this documentary than he goes, I got people that, never said boo to me before. Now all of a sudden, and I'm like, well, that's good, take advantage.
And he won a Stanley Cup, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy to me, but
right.
It's definitely a blessing for sure.
Well, we're doing quite a bit. We've been in conversation about bringing a full product line. That's part of, having you on. That's how we got in contact. It was originally through Brent Gretzky and just kind of.
Let me bring you up to speed on that because I got a call from Brent Gretzky, and I've been working with Wayne and Brent for years and years, and so Brent wanted some advice on a call that he got from you saying, geez, they want to, get me involved with this deal. Mm-hmm. And I kind of asked him, I said, well, what's that involve? And he said, well, they want to use my name on the jersey and they want to, kind of make me a bit of a partner in that. So they don't want to just do it without my permission, which is still part and parcel of everything you've done. Yeah. So he said to me, I just want to know what your thoughts are. And I said, well, what's they want autographs? And he said, no, they just want to use my name on the back of the jersey. I said, well, aren't you going to autograph anything? And he said, well, they haven't asked that. And I said, well, now I start doing some homework. I hadn't seen the documentary at that point. Like I said, I had missed it when it first came out. So
we'd been telling you to watch it since it came out.
No, all the kids have said, you got to see this. And somehow I missed it. So now I go watch it and I go, oh my God, this is unbelievable. We've got to be involved here. So that's when I contacted, Brent gave me your number and I contacted you and I said, Frameworth works with Sidney Crosby, Carey Price. We've done exclusive deals with Jonathan Taves all across the board. You did a little homework on our company. You've been launching and selling the jerseys through Verbero for I don't know, a year or so now, and they've been selling really well, but they haven't hit the autograph memorabilia channel. Mm-hmm. And I said, you're missing the boat here. There's a huge demand in our world for this stuff. And you agreed. And so we started working towards a partnership on selling the exclusively selling the autographed memorabilia. And that's why I've been in touch with all the players. And we're about to launch that. And thanks to Brent. And this way, we're still going to include the players. So we talked about the players kind of getting a celebrity status.
Right.
Now they're going to get a bit of an income out of it and have product for everybody that's looking for it. And the good news is we've tracked down the company that does the actual game model jerseys, which are going to be unique to this part of our industry,
the
as
autograph
opposed to
line,
as opposed to replicas. And even the NHL, they got replicas and they got Pro 8. Ours will be the game model jerseys from the company that made them for your team in the first place. And all the autographs will be on those jerseys. And we're so excited about that, and autograph pucks and autograph photos and all that stuff that we're going to be launching. This will be on air in a couple of weeks, and about the same time we'll do a pre-launch.
At the time they're listening to it, it is on air.
Right.
So,
well, that's true.
So I would say keep an eye out for the launch in a week or so. But by the time they listen to it, it's already there.
We're so excited about working with this. I have never been so pumped about a new line for a long time, maybe since I had Sidney.
Yeah, so keep an eye out on the Danbury Trashers social media, on Frameworth social media as well, the Frameworth website. We'll be doing some blasts and launches and stuff. And I think a lot of cross promotion, AJ, just because, like you said, people want this stuff. And it's crazy that you've kind of been sitting on this secret for 16 years, 17 years until it comes to fruition. And God, it feels like an investment you made, like maybe IBM reached out to you in a long time ago and you put $5 into it and then realized 20 years later you got a gold mine on your hands. So that's great.
Yeah, like I said when we first started, sometimes it's good to be lucky too. I mean, it's just sometimes all the stars align, and yeah, I'm super pumped to be working with you guys and Brian. And like I said, one of the things, I've done merch in the past, t-shirts, hoodies, stuff like that. I've done collaborations with more merchandise type stuff, but I've been holding off, and sometimes it just works out that way. I've been holding off on that memorabilia side, and so many people have asked me, collectors and everyone, and for whatever the reason, part of it by design, but also part of it just because it's been so crazy, I just hadn't gotten around to it. I mean, so many people ask me for pucks, and so it's one of those things I tell people, this story, it's sustaining itself. So, a lot of people are like, yo, you got to hurry, strike while it's hot, which I agree. But at the same time, I just think it's one of these stories that's just going to linger. And it doesn't want to go to sleep, really. It's crazy.
We're months away from it, and people are still this interested in it. And it seems like that kind of thing where a story this good doesn't just go away. This is, like the movie Slapshot is decades old now, and we still go back and watch it.
We're not jumping in here for a short-term thing. In fact, can you imagine getting, we didn't touch too much on Brent, but he was your first captain, Brent Gretzky.
Right.
Can you imagine getting a Brent Gretzky jersey for a lot less than Wayne's are going for $2,500 US? You're going to be able to buy this a lot more reasonably.
Well,
and actually,
that's why when I, reunited with Brent, a month or so back, I said, Brent, I'm a humble guy, but right now the Trasher logo is that logo right now. And I said, and he's not stupid. He knows his name is the most iconic name in hockey. And I'm like, could you imagine in 2022 selling a Gretzky Trasher jersey? It's with the captaincy and everything. I'm like, it's insane.
He is so excited about this, and I had lunch with Wayne last weekend when he was in Toronto, and I was telling him about this, and he's excited for his brother too. I said, well, maybe we can get a picture of you wearing your brother's jersey, and he said, oh yeah, that's how you're going to make the money on this. I said,
well,
we'll get him to do that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, and you told me, Brian, too, but Brent said it to me too. He's like, me and my brother got the most points all the time as a brother duo.
Yeah.
I said, maybe so, Brent. He may have the points on you, but you have the jersey on him. I said, so
that's amazing.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm happy for him too, because you know what? I've always given him a lot of credit. I mean, he's been in a shadow, and he marked him. You know, he did his thing, and he had a good career too. And I'm really happy for him too. And you know, like you said, this doc, if it brings attention to him and you know all the good things he's done too, that's great.
I think my ideal product item that I would love to bring is a replica of the famous Danbury Trashers chain. I'd love to redo that in the way that like a championship ring comes. Like that to me, you've got the rights to the logo. There's a conversation that'll happen.
This one up. We got a jewelry line happening now.
Well, I tell you, shockingly, a lot of people have asked me for that. Now, of course, everyone wants it until they have to pay. But I'll tell you what, I'm shocked how many people, when they saw that chain, it was like, oh, I got to get a Trasher chain. Nothing would surprise me anymore. So honestly, the more elaborate, the better. Now, we don't want to go too much longer. Obviously, we could go another 4 hours if we wanted to.
We'll get back in a little while, in another month.
For another recording. But we did have some fans reach out on Instagram with some rapid fire questions that we'll kind of use to wrap things up. First of all, one quick one from ZZS Cave. Do you have a memorabilia collection specifically in hockey? I know you took kind of a break from hockey after the Trashers, but memorabilia in general, do you have a relation to that?
So, yeah, I mean, as a young kid, I had a lot of I used to love memorabilia. I had like wrestling stuff. I had replica belts, hockey. Yeah. I had, I don't know if it was game used, but it was like a replica Martin Brodeur stick he had signed. I remember the big, I don't know. And again, it's been so long. I remember he had the Heaton stick. It was like Heaton.
Oh, yeah,
I think that was the brand.
Yeah.
You know, I had like, you know, Devils, like mini helmets, you know, Scott Stevens.
You were a big Devils fan, of course.
Oh, Scott Stevens was like a god to me. I had a mini Scott Stevens helmet. Football, I'm a Raiders fan, so I had like Raider helmets. So yeah, I didn't monopolize one sport. I had a little bit of everything. You know, I had a Stone Cold Steve Austin like 8x10 that I framed, which was like the holy grail for me at the time. I mean, a little bit of everything for sure.
I got to tell you just quickly, you and my eldest son, Chris, Mikey's brother, almost identical in your likes, almost your appearance. He had the same outfits, the same hats, love of wrestling. His all of that is so similar to what you are.
Yeah, funny. It's such a small world, and you know what? Yeah, my fashion sense was definitely unmatched back then. I mean, I get the kids, they mess with me about it every day here because, you know, I'm like, well, listen, we wore everything too big and you kids wear everything too small now. So it evened itself out. So.
The full Enaichi velour suit. I think my brother had the exact same one at one point.
He sounds like a great kid. That's awesome. Yeah,
exactly. So another one quickly, JBell88 on Instagram, best Mighty Ducks movie in your opinion?
Oh, man. It's got to be one or two. I don't even consider three, to be honest with you. I have to say two because that's where the Bash Brothers came together. So I'll go two.
Okay, then what about from Mr. Indica 007? First of all, Mr. Indica 007, pick an identity. Indica 007, which one? Just pick one. Pick one and stay with it. Secondly, his question is Conway or Banks?
Oh, boy. Now that's a good question. I never heard of that. I usually get picked between the Bash Brothers. This threw me for a loop. You know, I'm gonna go Conway because he was more the blue collar, you know, District 9 kid. So I'm gonna go with Charlie Conway.
Amazing. I love that. And then maybe you can get into this one. LankyMan01 sounds like my Instagram handle on Instagram. Favorite player you've signed for the Trashers? Maybe someone who wasn't featured in the documentary, just to give them a little bit of love.
Oh, man, that question will get me in trouble. But I would say, no, I'll answer it. I would say, you know what? Danny Stewart, the second year, he was like a little Brad Marchand. That's what I relate him to. Little guy, always in the mix. You know, he drew more instigator penalties than anyone I've ever seen. I mean, you just want to punch him in the face when you see him. And we traded for him. He was on the Fort Wayne Comets. We traded for him like early in the second season. And he ended up, I think he's a coach over in the UK somewhere, but a great guy. I mean, great team guy, could do literally everything. Fight, score, instigate, great locker room guy. So I'll say Danny Stewart for sure.
Amazing. And then one question from me, because I'm fascinated speaking with some of these athletes that we've had in before, guys especially who haven't won a Stanley Cup or maybe haven't reached like they had a goal in mind, didn't quite get to that extra level. You talk in the documentary so lovingly is a weird word to use for it, but about that final confrontation between Kalamazoo and Danbury, and you almost talk about that as the pinnacle victory of the team. What would you rather have? That night going the way it's going with the storyline, like a scene out of professional wrestling, or a victory against Kalamazoo in the championships in the final year?
Wow. Now that's a good question too. You know what? That's one of those flip of the coin type questions. Yeah. But I'll say this. At the end of the day, it's all about winning. And it would have been nice to win the cup ultimately in the end. I mean, you talk about a storyline. If we would have won the championship and then lost the team a week later, that would have been even more insane.
Yeah.
So my dad always taught me at the end of the day, it's about winning. So I would say if I had to, looking back in a more mature 35-year-old way, I would say definitely winning the cup in the end.
Amazing. I love that. Now we're getting close to the end of our time here, but we thank you for all the time you spent with us. We'll try to work something out to do something else, and especially with some of the players that we're going to have moving forward. But obviously you're now the owner of Champs Boxing Club in Danbury. So if you're in the area or traveling through, check them out online. You got @DB Trashers on Instagram. Is there anything else that you want to send people towards to put on the radar?
No, follow you guys, follow us, and I'm really excited for what we got cooking. I know we're chomping at the bit here, so I can't wait. I think people are gonna love it, and I mean, who knows the way this story goes? Who knows if there's another project down the line? I mean, it's only going to increase the...
I'm guessing there might be.
There might be. I don't know. But I will say that, I just think it's one of these stories that just seems to just somehow keep rolling. And, I'm excited. And, like me when I was little, if there's a little kid out there that would rather have like a Danbury Trasher memorabilia than like, an actual NHL team, that to me is that's what makes me smile and laugh. So who knows?
Amazing. Well, then how about this? I think you'll agree with me on this one, AJ. Let's then dedicate this episode to the late, great, one of my favorite human beings of all time, Scott Hall, who passed away just about a week or so prior to recording. I imagine, based on everything you say, Razor Ramon, that he would have been one of your favorites as well. So we'll have that in his honor, and I'm sure he would have been a huge fan of the Trashers as well.
Yeah, so, definitely. No, we were the NWO of hockey, so
that's a great way to look at it. A great way.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, AJ, for AJ Galante of the Danbury Trashers, and so much more. For Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing, myself, Mikey Aaronworth, host of the Sign Off podcast. This is us signing off. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter @Frameworth Sport or Instagram @Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram @Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it.